So today is the last training session in the 7 series session that's been going on over the last 7 weeks. We are going to be talking about specifically the control panel functions right here and management review, which is right underneath the control panel. This whole 7 series training session will repeat probably next month, and you'll all get emails about that as well. We're looking at trying to change things up a little bit so that people who have come in the past would want to come again. So you'll see an email about that as well. But you're always welcome to attend the next series if you'd like. I'd also like to plug TouchStone University. So I just clicked in the upper right-hand corner of my TouchStone screen right here where it said Resource Center. And that always opens in a second window. So this is the Resource Center. Up here under Support Plus, we have listed out our free trainings. There are all user trainings. This one called TouchStone University happens a couple times a month, and it's a shorter session. It's usually half an hour, 45 minutes at the most. And during these sessions, we talk about just best practices for using TouchStone. Any new releases that we've had, we highlight those. And just talk basically about tips and techniques for using TouchStone overall. So if you're interested in that, then you can just hit this View Upcoming Classes and register for those, and then you'll get an email reminder of when the session occurs. And this, for those of you who haven't seen this is the Resource Center, and there's a lot within the Resource Center on how to use TouchStone. The user guides area right here has like a step-by-step for everything in TouchStone. Under the webinars header right here, you can click on the technical training webinars, and you'll see the latest of the 7 series right here. So these are replaced every time we have replaced with the new one. So this one right here, we're at number 7. This old one will be replaced with a new one, and all these 1 through 6 are the new training series. So I know people have been being emailed those, but you can always go here and find them as well. Or if you want an employee to go and watch 1 or 2 of the webinars, they can always access them here. In addition to that, we've got strategy webinars, which are right here. These are, some of them are me and some are other experts that we've brought in to talk about different strategies for not only running a business, but obviously building processes. This one's pretty good. This is, I think this is Scott Fritz, or maybe it's Chet Holmes, I don't know. But these sessions here, these webinars, if you just need some inspiration or are just interested, you can watch those. And then always remember that in the video section right here, we have this right here, Process of the Week. So what these are at the end of the sessions when I've been talking about the process of the week, usually the last 10 minutes or so of the technical training, that snippet or that bit of the webinar is in here. So if you're ever interested in any of the library processes, you don't want to watch the whole webinar again just to hear what I said about the particular library process, you can always go in and find it here. So this is guiding, getting, doing, running. There's 2 in running that we've broken apart, admin, finance, and then IT. So if you click one of these, then you'll see there's 5 library processes that are in here. There's just a little write-up on new employee onboarding, and then if you click here, you can listen to the 10 or 15-minute explanation of how to use new employee onboarding, that particular library process. Okay, so let's go back here. So this is the dashboard, and those of you who have been in all the series have seen this over and over again, and every time you log into TouchStone, you're immediately taken to the dashboard. The dashboard is mobile compliant, so that's one thing to know, which means if you log in on a mobile device or even a phone, it's formatted to fit on your phone. And that's helpful if you're in the field, in a car, wherever you are, you can log in and use the features inside of the control panel and management review. So before we get into the details of technically how to use these tools, I just want to talk about in general why they exist. So when you're attempting to build a process-dependent business, the first step is documenting, obviously. You need to document your processes, at least one of them, before you can use them. And that's what this 4 functions, org chart, process, tools functions are about, these tools. So they're for documenting. Once you've got something documented, even one process, you want to implement it. So you want to get employees using it. This step is critical. Even if you have employees who have been doing their work the same way for the last 10 years, if you're going to document what they do, then it's important to sit with them and say, hey, this is now, we've documented this work. Let's go over it and talk about it together. Let's review it together. So even if processes have existed in your business for years and people have been doing it their own way maybe, or in a consistent way if you're lucky, it's still important to sit with them, show them TouchStone, and say, this is the documented process. We put this time and effort into documenting this process so that everybody does the work consistently, so that one department can rely on another to have the information that they need to complete the work that that department needs. So talk about how it benefits them. Make it important. Encourage them to see that the documentation is valuable, not just for them, but for the business overall. Use words like, if someone goes on vacation, we need to have a consistent documented way of doing work so another person can fill in. As the business grows, when we hire new people, we need to have consistent training. Each department needs to be able to rely on the other to get consistent work done so that the work is streamlined and efficient. All employees get this because they've all experienced when someone's done, inefficient, terrible work and they don't have the information they need to do what they need to do. So that person's inefficiency or lack of quality is then affecting the work that they do. So that's, immediate thing, a light bulb that goes off for employees. Also, talk about innovation. So this is the way we've always done it. How could it be better? Everybody gets that, hopefully. How can we make it better? How can we change it to be better for you, better for the business overall? So implementation. Documentation first, over here with the 4 functions. Pull a process from the process library. It's documented. Then implementation here in the control panel. So implement, train, get people to use it, get people to follow it. And then innovation, which happens down here. So these are the 3 steps of the quality improvement or the business development cycle: documentation, implementation, innovation. And the tools in TouchStone are designed for that. Document here, implement here, get people to use it, and then innovate. The managers innovate down here. The employees innovate. They use it. They talk about how it could be better. When something changes, they change the documentation. So we throw around this word innovate. I love this word. It's a great word, but it means make things better. Well, that's good, but the bottom line is you got to keep things updated. So not just make them better, but make sure that they still work. We all know that things change all the time. And what happens when you have a documented process and things change and there's no culture of updating and innovation is it just kind of doesn't work anymore. And then when anybody goes to the control panel to use it or look at it, or a manager goes to train with it, everyone says, well, we don't do it this way anymore. This completely changed. And then over time, your documentation just becomes irrelevant. So building in the innovation / update your processes is really essential to ensure that it helps you over time. So documentation over here, implementation here, and then innovation or even just updating happens here with the managers. So this is a control panel that I have assigned right here. And how control panels are assigned is over here in account administration. So I'll just highlight that real quick. So you go to user accounts, and then here on your user list, you choose a position, and then you go here to Control Panel, and then you assign that person a control panel for the position they fill. So Mike here has a control panel for sales assistant. So whatever box they fill on the org chart, the job that they're responsible for is what you give them a control panel for. And what this does is it gives them access, gives them read-only access by default to all of the processes on that job description. So all the processes on sales assistant here appear in the control panel for this position. Now I can have a person like Mike and Bill here, and maybe they're both sales assistants. Well, I assign them both to this position, give them a control panel, both of them for the same position. But when each of them logs in, they'll be accessing the same processes, but when they use them or put information into them, or I put training notes, it's unique to each of them because they have their own usernames and passwords. So assign control panels here in account administration. The control panel, or the information in a control panel, is derived from the job description for that position. So when I click this control panel, all these processes here that you're seeing are on my job description. They're on the job description for the manager of marketing and sales. So if we go to the org chart here, this is what I mean. This position here on the org chart, if I click on it, all the processes that I put on this job description are the ones that will appear in the control panel. So let's add a process here just so you can see how that happens. So let's take this one and add it. So I just added this process called workflow critical path right down here to this job description. Because I've added it to this job description of the manager of marketing and sales, when I go to the dashboard here and I select this position, I'm going to see that process right here. So when you add a process to the job description, it will put it in the control panel. It puts it onto the default list initially. So if you haven't gone in and created groups and moved your processes around in a control panel, then all of them will be listed in this group called default. All the processes that are in the default list should eventually be moved into groups, because I think it's just easier for people to see it. It's a little more interesting. It's easier to find things. So this is a group title right here, and this is too employee training. So to create a group and move your processes into it or organize them, you just click this button here that says Create Group. And then you're going to put in the name of the group. So choose a name. Oh, I didn't save it. And then you hit Save right here. So now this group name is right here. It just appeared right at the top. So choose group names that are by subject area, if that makes sense for the position, like employee training or management work. Or you can create group names by timing, if that makes sense for the position, like end of the month or first of the month or end of the year. Another group name I like is like on demand, or another one I've seen is called resource processes. So these could be processes that aren't used very often. They're like sometimes people need to access them. So it could be resource material. So we have this process called product and service knowledge base, and this is full of information about the business's products and services. And then you can take a group like that and kind of drag it to the bottom of, because all this is drag and drop. These groups can be moved up and down, and drag it to the bottom of the control panel. And then it's kind of out of the way of the everyday work or once a month work that the employees do. But they know it's here if they never ever need to access this information. So build group titles by subject, like employee training, management work, sales work, admin work. You don't have to use the word work. You can use admin if you want. Usually the position itself and the type of work that happens in that position dictates the type of group titles that you would make. A lot of times finance positions have a lot of timing deadlines. So you may see some timing groups that would work well for that type of position. If you want to edit a group title, it's just this box right here. So I hit edit, and then I would select the title I want to edit, and then I change the title and hit save. Easy as that. So it just edited that title. You can also delete groups. So if I hit delete group, then I'm going to hit the drop down here. I'm going to choose this one to delete, and then I hit delete, and then that group's gone. If you delete a group title and it's got processes in it, like this one does, then it's just going to throw all those processes back into the default list. So they won't be gone. It'll just have moved back to the default list. The only way to remove processes from a control panel is to go to the org chart, go to that position, and then remove it from the actual job description. So we're going to remove this one. And so now it's gone from this job description, so then it will be gone from the control panel as well. So the only way to remove them is to remove them from that actual job description, which removes it from the control panel. So you see that particular process we just added is gone. So create groups for each control panel, ones that you have. Managers can go in through management review and create groups for their employees. So here's Bill right here. If I go to him, I'm his manager. So I see this functionality called create, edit, or delete group. So I can build groups and put Bill's processes into those groups. So the idea with that is that I'm his manager. I'm going to decide how to organize his processes. He can also go in and do it himself. So when he logs in, he's going to see these functions as well. So we make it two-sided. Either the employee themselves can go in and organize it, or the manager can go in and organize it by building groups. Okay. It is individual, though. Somebody's asking this question, so I'll answer that. They're saying if you build a group for salespeople, does it default for all salespeople? So the answer to that is no. Each user on the user list, so we'll go back here, each user, even though they may have the same control panel, they will organize their own groups. And we do it that way because in small business especially, and TouchStone is designed for small business. In small businesses especially, there are employees who have unique situations sometimes. So Mike and Bill might both be salespeople, but maybe Mike comes in the morning and only does a certain amount of the sales work, and Bill comes in the afternoon and does the rest. Or maybe because Mike's a little bit more senior, he can do contracts, but Bill can't. So we allow the dashboard or the control panel groups to be designed by person. So in that Mike and Bill situation, if Bill doesn't know how to do contracts, or maybe he would never do them because Mike always does them, and he hasn't been trained on that yet and he doesn't have time for it, whatever that situation is, in the control panel, you could create a group and call it Do Not Use, and then put the contracts process into it. So this would say Do Not Use, and then you just move it to the bottom of his control panel and tell him you don't do that work yet. So maybe someday we'll train you in it, but right now Mike does it. So they can customize the groups if you have to by the person's situation. So once you've created the groups, you can drag and drop the work into them. So I'm just holding my mouse click down, and then I just drag this. Easy as that. So I can pull it back up and pull it down. You can also reorder within the group, so you pull those up and pull them down. When you go to a control panel, there's this feature here to the right where you can collapse everything and just see the groups if you want to. And then, when I click here, I just see the work inside of here. In my own control panel at Business Design Corp, I've got a lot of processes on my job description. So it's easier, especially when I'm, on the computer, I can just hit collapse and then I see the groups and then I just go right to the group I want to use. The stuff I use all the time is generally like at the top. So put those groups at the top, and then you can collapse it all. You see the groups easily, and then I just hit this, and I'm going to see just the processes I want to see. So the idea about the control panel is that an employee would log into TouchStone, and they would go to their control panel, and they would use the processes. So they're going to use the processes, number one, if they need to remember how to do something. So that's a reason to have your employees with usernames and passwords to TouchStone, have them be able to log in and access their information. I think I was talking about this last week, where TouchStone can, and documented processes in general, can change your management style. Because rather than being the answer man for everything, or woman, like you're the firefighter, you're like the person who knows everything, which sometimes people get excited by that and like it, but for a manager, it's not a good trait to have, honestly. It causes you to be inefficient as a manager. So get people used to going into TouchStone and finding their own things. Have them look for it in TouchStone first. If they forget how to do something, have them go to TouchStone and look and see if it's there. Hopefully it's there, but you know what? If it's not there, then that is just a reason to put it in there, right? So you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You're like forcing the employee to go and look in TouchStone and access that information that you may have put in there. But if it's not in there, then you're having them put it in there. So rather than just answering the question like you've always done, if they come back to you and say, well, you know, that task isn't in TouchStone, I don't see that process there, then you say, okay, let's sit down and put it in right now. It may take you an extra half an hour or even an hour to do that, but it's going to save you 100 times that in the end, because you're not going to have to be doing it over and over and over and over. You're going to spend that hour, and then it's going to be done. It's going to be in there. So they access the control panel to remind themselves of what to do, or to get information that they need that they don't remember all the time. This happens to me all the time too. Like this happens with onboarding too, a lot. I have a piece of onboarding. I may not have done that in 6 months. So rather than trying to remember what to do or making mistakes thinking I do remember, I can go right here to the onboarding process and I can just remind myself of what to do. Rudimentary work that's happening all the time, that I'm doing it every day, or an employee is doing it every day. Once they're trained, they may not need to access the processes and TouchStone all the time. But for work that they don't do all that often, or they do it once a month even, as all of us get older, we forget. So having people go back and just refresh their memories. New employees are going to come into the control panel all the time because, and we'll go over this in the management review area, but they're going in here for new employee training. So they're going in to learn the processes for the first time. So they're going to be accessing for the TouchStone every day for the first, 30, 60 days of their employment. Going into it, studying, remember, reading, all of that. So for employees access the control panel to get to the information they need to do their jobs, to remind themselves of what to do, to be reminded of what to do. So that's number one. Number two, they're going to go in, new employees are going to go into it all the time. That's a no-brainer. For new employee training, the control panel is phenomenal. The third reason is if there is information within the processes that they can complete and use. So not every process is like this, but there should be key processes where employees can access the process and there is something for them to do in it. So let's go to an example of that. So here's a process, and I made this group of these 5 processes, and I call them important management processes. I did this just for this training. Normally this is just under my management work. These are 5 processes for any manager that I think are fantastic processes. If you're going to have any, you should have these 5. If you're debating about which ones to work on first, it should be this 5. So I put these here just so people could see them as we go through and talk about how to use the control panel. So if I'm doing one-on-one meetings, I'm a manager and I'm doing that with my employees, I would access this process. I can go up and collapse this again. This one's not that big of a deal because it's only got a few tools in it, but I can collapse it right here just so my view is a little bit better. And then I'd go right to the custom form here, and this is my agenda. So this is an example of a process that could be used in TouchStone. So the third reason to log into a control panel is if there's a process in there that is useful to use in TouchStone. So I go here to the Save As, and I can save this as the employee's name. This is, actually the name of the employee. Whatever's put in the Save As field inside of every one of the tools, and we'll go through every tool, but this just happens to be a custom form. Whatever's put inside the Save As is searchable. So remember that. If you want to be able to search for something like an employee's name or a project name or a client's name or a situation, put it into the Save As. This is the notes field where you can put in notes and extra notes about what happened. In my meeting agenda, I have a notes field down in the custom form, so I may not even use this, but in other tools, it's useful to have. And then here, this is a bit redundant if I'm going to put the employee's name here, so you probably don't need it here in this form. I can put in the date that the meeting's going to happen. I can put in the items to discuss. So these are the things I want to talk about during the meeting. I can put goals achieved from the last period or not. So in the items to discuss for 1 week, I may have a list of things that I want them to talk about and to do, and then I look to see if those things were done. If they're not, then I put them into this section. So I'm going through and filling out this agenda form for my upcoming meeting. Could be a department meeting, could be a one-on-one meeting, and then when I save it, it date and time stamps it, the date that I saved it, and it saves it back to TouchStone. So that's what's happening. I click the form, I fill it out, I save it, and then it's saving it back to TouchStone. This breadcrumb trail right across the top of the screen here will always get you back to where you were. So this is back to the one-on-one meeting process in the control panel. And if I want to see that form that I've saved, I looked over here in the folder called Completed. Now I'm going to see all these agenda forms that I've saved over time. If I want to access this one called the one I just did, I click on it and then it opens and here's the form. So once it's saved into this folder here called Completed. And I can access it here just by clicking it and then going to that particular form. Work plans inside of the control panel are meant to be just for reference purposes. So here's this work plan on how to do one-on-one meetings. And it just reminds me of how to do them if I forget or I just want to be reminded or if I need to be reminded by my manager. So let's go back to the main control panel here. Here's the performance review process. Let's go through that one. So here's a performance review. I would access this process because I'm going to do a performance review. And there are things within this process, tools like checklists or forms that I need to fill out for the review. So again, I could go to this work plan and just kind of look at it and remind myself of what to do. Then I would probably go, and again, I can collapse this if I want to see comprehensively what's in it. Because these tools are here, I know they're here. If this process didn't have any scripts, then this wouldn't be here, kind of like the one-on-one meeting process we looked at that just had a form in it in a work plan. So I'd go to the scripts here are the checklist, and then I call up the performance review checklist. And then again, I probably save this as the employee's name, and I could put in notes. And then I literally check this off as I do these things. So as I go through the performance review process, I check these boxes off, and then I save them. When I save it, it date and time stamps it, and it saves a copy of this back to TouchStone. If I go back here again on the breadcrumb trail, and then I look in this completed folder right next to the checklist title, So move your cursor right around to this word completed and I hit it, then there's that checklist right here. If I want to go back to it the next day, I click on it and then I can go and finish completing it if I didn't finish it. And then I go save and it saves it again. Date and time stamps it with the most current date and then it's saved back to TouchStone. Once a process tool is saved in the control panel, you'll notice this button also appears. So this is the print. If I click this print button, it's going to open it in a PDF and allow me to print my completed checklist. Even on mobile devices, if you have a printer, a Wi-Fi printer, you can hook those up to your phones, and then if you want to print something from your phone, you can use your phone to then send it, that PDF that we were just looking at, to the printer and print it. So let's go back. Here's a script inside of the process. So the scripts are here just for reminder's sake. So if I look at this script, I can kind of remind myself of questions that I have to answer. If there's a script in a control panel or in a process that someone has a control panel for, and they have to look at it while they're on the phone, maybe, because sometimes that happens, they can call up the script if they're on the phone and not looking at someone right in front of them, and then they can have the script open while they're talking to the person on the phone. So that's the example of, accessing this information because you need to be reminded of what to say. This is an uploaded file inside the control panel. So if I click this file, it's going to ask me to view the file. So remember, uploaded files are Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, or PDF documents. So this Word file, or this Excel spreadsheet, I think it is, was uploaded to this process on the Process Tools page. So that's how it got here. When someone was documenting the performance review process, they uploaded this employee compensation plan to it. If I hit View File, TouchStone's going to launch this file, this uploaded file, and when I click on it, it's going to open and show me this employee compensation plan. So when there's a tool in a process that needs to be a spreadsheet, like this one does because it's running calculations and numbers, then you upload that file, and then for reason number one of accessing the control panel, people can access this and use it. So if I'm trying to figure out what kind of percentage increase to give to this employee based on an excellent review, I can use this spreadsheet to tell me what their increase would be. Now let's imagine for a second that this was a spreadsheet that I had to add information to. So in addition to seeing this, I'm supposed to, add info to the actual spreadsheet so that someone else can look at it or so I can access it later. So I'm taking this template, viewing it in the control panel, adding my information to it. Then I would go File, Save As, because I've added new information to this spreadsheet. So I'm going to need to save that new information. So now I'm saving it back to my computer. Then I would go back to TouchStone and I would upload completed file. So I go upload completed file. I find the one that I've added the information to. It's uploaded and then I save it. So now that changed spreadsheet, the spreadsheet I added information to, has now been uploaded to the control panel. If I hit View File again right here, I'd get a blank copy, or I'd get that original copy of the spreadsheet. If I want to look at the spreadsheet I've altered or that I've added information to, I again go here to this completed folder, and there's my spreadsheet. So if I click on it, and then I hit View File, TouchStone's going to open this spreadsheet that I added that information to. So I'm showing you this because sometimes there are spreadsheets where employees need to add information to them. It could be a budget, it could be their key indicators, it could be a financial spreadsheet, any situation like that where the employee needs to access it and not only view it, but then add information to it and then save it. We do this every day, but you save these files randomly on your networks, and sometimes they're hard to find, and other people can't always see them or find them. Your manager who wants to view them. So this is just a new way of like saving spreadsheets or saving content, saving data back to TouchStone. The value of doing it in TouchStone is I can easily know that if I want to find the updated employee compensation plan that has all of the information I added to that spreadsheet, I can go to the performance review process and I know it's right there. I can run a report and find it. More importantly, if my manager wants to see that spreadsheet that I've put data into, they can go run a report and find it in my control panel. So this is the next thing I'm going to say is kind of a higher level thing, but I'll say it for those of you who want to use the control panel for this purpose. If you access a spreadsheet like this one, an uploaded file, this is an Excel spreadsheet. We just saw that. Let's say that this was a contract and it was in a Word document. I could view this file, it's the contract. I could fill it out with the customer's name and all their data and all their information, and let's imagine they have to sign it. So I take that spreadsheet or that form and I save it as a PDF, on my computer. I email it to them, they sign it, they scan it back in, email it to me. Then I go to the contracts process or whatever process that contract was in. I save this as the client's name. Then I go upload and I choose that PDF. Let's see if I have a PDF here. Yep. Open. And then I save it. So even though this original file was a spreadsheet, I can take a scanned PDF and upload that still to the file, to the process. And if we go look here in the completed folder, there's that scanned PDF, this one. So you can use the control panel to store documents like that if you want to. For management purposes, it gets to be useful when you're talking about things like an employee handbook or a discipline form, like a written warning you give someone, and I'll show you there's a process in TouchStone for giving warnings. But if you want the employee to sign that they were given that warning, you can scan it in as a PDF and upload that document. This is the Documents tool inside the control panel. I'm just going to click this document. So this is what the document tool looks like. This line needs to be returned on the Process Tools page. That's why it's so long. But you can have a document like this one where you've cut and pasted in or put in columns and rows like this, and for a performance review form. These fields are all live now, so I can fill these out with the employee's name, and I can go down and put in comments right here, and I can put a grade. And then when I'm happy with the form, I save it, and then it's the same idea. It saves it back to TouchStone with all that information. So these documents, if the document contains fields that you want filled out, like this one does, then that can be filled out inside of TouchStone. And if we go back here and then look across at the completed folder, these documents are, just like everything else I've showed you, are saved back to TouchStone. With a policy note, so here's a process that has a policy note in it. Anytime a process has a policy note in it, I always think it's a good idea to have employees go and say, read and agree, and then they save that back to TouchStone, and then you as the manager has, an instance of that they've read and agreed to the policy, which is always a good thing for management purposes, because if the employee ever forgets or doesn't follow the policy, you don't have to have a conversation about whether they got it or not or whether they understood. You actually have a date and time stamp when they actually read and agreed to it. So that's the performance review process. So the idea about using the processes in TouchStone is anytime there's a tool or a form or a checklist, or you need some evidence that the process has been done at a certain date and time, they can go into TouchStone, go to the control panel, access those processes, and fill them out and save them back to TouchStone. So let's talk about management review for a second. So employees are up here using their processes. When you go to implement something for the first time, you ask employees, go into your control panel. This process is now available to you. I want you to study it, read it. We're going to talk about it in the meeting. Mark it as complete when you've done that. So they make a little note to you, read and agreed to this, or yes, I read the work plan, and they save that back to TouchStone. So you can implement that way. You can implement in a meeting setting where you go and show TouchStone on a screen or even on your laptop and say, hey, this is the new process. You all have it in your control panels. Let's walk through it together. Then managers need to come in through this area and make sure that the work is getting done and to make sure that the processes are relevant, updated, and innovated. So that's the manager's primary accountability, ensuring that processes are used. They're getting results through employees by using the processes. A documented process is the most valuable tool that any manager could ever have. And I will die on that hill. It's true. Any manager who doesn't use documented processes, doesn't have them, is at an extreme disadvantage when it comes to management. I would suggest that they're extremely inefficient, overworked, chaotic, in a bad mood a lot of the time. They don't like being managers because it's difficult to manage when you don't have training and you don't have a consistent way of teaching people how to do things. You don't have a consistent way of referring to how they do it. You're just, herding cats. You're just a crazy person trying to make sure everyone's doing their job. Causes extreme inefficiency and lack of profitability. So as a manager, your biggest asset is a documented process. If you believe that wholeheartedly and you create a management philosophy that dictates that, all your managers are going to come to work differently every day. And their primary goal is going to be to ensure that every single one of these people here are using their processes, that all those processes are up to date and efficient. They're referring to them, they're using them. And that's a beautiful result to get because it's going to make your business more profitable and worth more money and more enjoyable. So here in management review, there are tools designed for this. So here's this person called Mary. And now I'm seeing all of the processes that Mary is responsible for. I know I can reference any one of these processes with her and I can say, hey, Mary, you didn't do your to-do list today. Go in and do it. Or, hey, Mary, I heard you on the phone the other day with this customer and it just didn't sound good. I want you to go listen to the audio file in this process and tell me, tell me how that sounds. So you refer to them for that employee. For new employee training, let's imagine Mary here is a new employee. I would go through every process one at a time. So here's her daily to-do checklist. I'd go through with her. These are the things you do every day. I want you to fill out this checklist every time you do them. When I'm happy with it, I can mark her as trained in this checklist, and I can put in training notes. I can even put in, how much time it took me to train her in this. This is good statistics to keep, and then I just save it. So I'm in management review. I'm not completing this checklist. I'm just looking at the checklist she's responsible for, and I'm marking her as trained, or I'm keeping, training notes. You can also see the little green check mark that appears next to this once I've trained her in it. And I can always go here to this notes field here to the right to see the notes that I've entered, the training notes. Or I can go and flip this whole flag, which trains her in the whole process. Now, this only has a checklist in it, but other processes have more tools in them than that. So you just hit this one button, and then when I go back here to her in management review, I see this green check mark that she's been trained. So this is what I mean by this is a checklist for training employees. I go down to the next process on customer complaints. I'm teaching her all of these things. I can go to the work plan and say, add in more notes about her training here, that I went over this with her. Then I go back when I'm happy that she's been trained in all of this. So she's gone through and watched the videos, the audio, all of it. Then I flip this flag, trained all, and then the check marks appear through every process tool. So you can do them one at a time or you can do them all at once. Some processes are more complicated than others, so you're going to kind of go one at a time and check it off as you do it over a few days or a few weeks. But if it's easy enough, it happens all in one day, then I go and click this trained all, and then I'm going to see again that she's trained in this. If you have an employee that you've thoroughly trained and they're having a significant issue with one of the processes that they're just not following, like the other day I heard one of our customer service people, they weren't dealing with a complaint, but they were talking on the phone to one user, and she's an intern, so she is a millennial, quite young, and was saying like, and I might have told this story already, but she was saying things like you guys, that's what it was. You guys this, you guys that. And it's a natural thing that kind of rolls off people's tongue, the whole you guys, but it sounds horrible on the phone. So we actually have an audio file of this exact thing, what not to do and say. So she went and listened to that and learned about, how it sounded or heard how it sounded, which was very impactful. So back to this idea, if you have a problem with an employee, unmark them as trained. Make a note in the process that they need to study or review or what needs to happen. And then when they go to their dashboard, they're going to see that they are unmarked as trained in that process. And then when you're happy with the retraining, you can go and mark it again. So managers go into management review to focus in on processes with employees, do new employee training, also to look at notes maybe that have been made to them in the processes. So you're using the management review area to ensure that the employees are thoroughly trained. There's also a report tool, which is over here, which allows you to run reports of employees' work. So I hit the report tool, and then I'm taken here, and I can run a control panel report, which is of my own work. So here I'm just going to put today's date range in just so you can see what it looks like. And then I hit run report. And now I'm seeing these are all of the things that I just completed while we were talking. I just hit complete, or I saved an uploaded file. So this is running a report of the things that I've done in my control panel. So if I wanted to see that employee contract or the PDF I uploaded, or if I want to look at the performance review, I can search the save as, which is right here, or I can do a date range, or I can search by process tool. So if I just wanted to search for just the checklist that I created, then I can do that as well. Right next to the control panel is the management review reports. So here's where I would be searching as a manager for what my employees had done. So if I had an employee in that was being trained that week and I wanted them to go into their control panel and review all the tools and make notes about what they did, maybe complete tests that I had in there, and then at the end of the day, I would run a management review report of that employee. And then I would see a list of everything that they did in their control panel that day, or based on that save as, or based on that process tool type. Here under user is where you can choose the employee that you want to search for. If you don't choose a user, it's going to search everyone that you have management review for. If you just hit run report here, I'm going to see everything Mary has done, and this is throughout time because I didn't put a date range in. You also see this little graph which says the percentage of things that she's using in the control panel, which may or may not be interesting to you. But here, I see the notes, the save as that she put to me, like the different projects she's working on. And then it organizes it by process tool title. So these are the customer complaints things that she's done. Here's a checklist. She's even made a note that says finished 1 through 3, but she hasn't done the rest yet. She's labeling this as, a client's name. So if you're a manager and you have things in the control panel on the dashboard that your employees are doing in TouchStone, checklists, you've got new employee training going on, you have forms that they're filling out, you want to check for checklists, especially if they're daily checklists, you want to check once a day that they're there before you leave for the day. And it's not that much work. You hit the report tool, go to management review, put the date range in. Here's a few clicks here, and you hit run report. There's nothing going to be in here because this is my demo account. We haven't been in doing things in the management area. But that's the idea. Hit run report, and you'll see a list of all the checklists just pop up. And if you look and you notice one of your employees is missing, you know they didn't do the checklist. Send them an email. Say, hey, where's your checklist? You can even take, and I've done this lots of times before, you can even take a picture of it from TouchStone just like this. Go to an email. Once you save this simple screenshot, you don't have to save it back to your computer. You go right click paste, put it in an email, and send it to them. Where's your checklist? It takes 5 minutes at the most if you have to correct someone. It's not that big of a deal. And it's absolutely worth it if you want to make sure the checklists continue to get done over time. So that's the report tool. So this has been, a lot of information all at once. But just to remember, the key point of the control panel is to make sure your processes are implemented. Make sure they're implemented. Make sure employees are using them. The key purpose of management review is to ensure managers to make sure that the employees are doing what they need to do, they're thoroughly trained, and that the processes are innovative and useful. That's what the manager does. Have your managers scan through their employees' processes once a month just to look at them. It doesn't take that much time. I go here to Bill. I know he's the bookkeeper. I click on accounts payable. I just look through these work plans. How's it look? How's it look? How's it look? This one's empty. If he's made notes to me about things he's done or things that are missing in the processes, I can see those notes here. They just review it. Once things are documented, just to have the review done, maybe it's a half an hour a week. I don't even know. It probably isn't even that much. But it's worth it for the manager to do because everything stays updated. I heard a manager say to me the other day about TouchStone, well, we wait till January and then we have this, we just go through and innovate everything or we update everything. Horrible idea. That's the worst idea ever because what that says is throughout the year, things aren't being updated. You don't want to wait till the end of the year. It's a huge, daunting task at the end of the year. And people forget. And more importantly, they stop using TouchStone. There's a huge benefit to you having people innovate and update things as they change, making them better. You get the result of having everything updated, but you also get the result of teaching your employees about quality control, teaching them this life skill of efficiency and making sure that the work that they're doing is actually consistent. You create a culture of innovation, which is a wonderful culture to have. We're going to get to the process of the week here in a minute, but there's another quick idea that I have for you about making sure your processes are implemented. You can have a monthly department meeting or even a weekly. I think monthly is good. And so say this is for the sales department. So let's go back here to the dashboard and let's go to a sales position. Here's Sam. So say for the sales department, you have a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, whatever it is. Choose a process of the month or a process of the week. Have that process be the process of the week or month that people focus on. So what the game is we choose the process of the week, like sales follow-up, and people are told what it is at the beginning of the month or the week, and you say, throughout this month, I want everybody to read over this process in their control panel and make notes inside of it on how it could be better. So they go to the process and choose the work plan, and then here in the notes field, they can make notes and save them back to TouchStone. Notice the process, follow through, look at it, look at the scripts, and at the end of the month, talk about all the ideas people have and how it could be better. And really congratulate people who add things to the frequently asked questions script or say how something could be changed. It's a short little thing that you can do once a month to engage everyone in the documentation and to get them excited about contributing to it. So implement some kind of process of the month. It's a great idea. So the process I want to talk about today here quickly in the 5 minutes that I have is our task delegation and work management process. So this is one of those things that I would deem important management processes: task delegation and work management. So let's go to the 4 functions here in guiding the business. And here is the process. It's in the library here. So if you want to pull it down from the process library, it's in guiding the business. So task delegation and work management: clearly delegate work to an employee through the use of systems or processes. Same thing. So this kind of dovetails with this idea of managing with processes. So this ability for a manager to be able to delegate work effectively is critical to a manager's ability to be successful. The inability to delegate is one of the biggest problems I see with managers at all levels. They can't delegate because there's no documented process for it. That's typically why, and they don't know how. So the idea is you can create a process and then delegate that process effectively. So managers who feel like they have to have their hands on everything, multitasking, micromanaging, this guards against that. So surround yourself with the best people. That's the first step. Good recruiting and hiring process. Delegate authority. Have a delegation process. Don't interfere as long as the process is documented and you've decided upon who will be carrying it out. So here in this process are some work delegation guidelines. So it just gives you kind of some context for this and how to delegate, what to be thinking about when you're delegating. There's another work plan here called Missed Accountability. This is a great management tool. You tell someone to do something, you give them you're not advocating the work, you're truly delegating it. You give them a clear understanding of what it is they're supposed to do, and they just don't do it. So the Missed Accountability process can help kind of get your employees to see that you are actually tracking what you're telling them to do. And then there's these great little custom forms in here about, here's a Missed Accountability or task delegation form that you can use inside the control panel. Date assigned, date due, the task assigned, end result, task specifications, specific things you want them to do. You can even go to an email and email out to the employee, I want you to do this process, and create a hyperlink to it. That's another way to delegate something when you really have a documented process for it. Here's this Missed Accountability form that can be used. So when you tell someone to do something and they have a clear understanding of what to do and they don't hit it by the due date, well, you know, this is a way to correct that without having to go to them and say, why isn't it done? Where is it? When will it be ready by? There's also this great assignment here called the delegation exercise. So if you're a manager or a business owner and you're overwhelmed by accountabilities and I say this, you need to delegate things, and you're like, I have no clue how I can delegate things. Go through this exercise. So this just simply has you make a list of work you can delegate right now. So easy things that you know you could delegate if you had someone to do it. Then make a list of work you can delegate if you wrote a system for how to do it. If you wrote a process for how that work is done, you could delegate it. Make a list of those things. And then make a list of the work that you could never delegate. So this right here, the work you could never delegate, is what's in your mind all the time. And it stops you from seeing the actual work you could delegate. So if you have an overwhelmed manager, if you are overwhelmed yourself, this simple delegation exercise can really help you get clarity to it. What are the things that if you had someone to do them right now, you could just give it to them to do, no problem? What are the things that if you wrote a process for how it gets done, you could delegate. And then one of the things you could never delegate. Once you have these lists, do this stuff right away. Even if you have to hire an intern to do it, whatever the situation is, get rid of this stuff right away and then start working on this list. And TouchStone just absolutely helps you with this, clearly, because the things that you need a process for before you can delegate are the things you need to focus on documenting right away. So this is the delegation process. And then just to come full circle with it, if we go here to the control panel and you access this process, then you can use these forms down here. So I could go down here to the task delegation form. I could put the to and the from, the date, put in the things that I need to get done by that employee or what I'm trying to delegate to them, save it, print it, and you've got the tracking of that delegation. And then the missed accountability form. If somebody has missed something that you gave them to do, you can track that as well using the missed accountability form. All right, everybody. I have a few questions. I'm out of time, so I'm going to answer that over email. This tends to be one of the longer webinars because there's a ton going on in here. But the advice I have for you about this dashboard functionality, about the control panel, about management review, if you haven't started using this yet, you use it at all in TouchStone, just try one thing. Just try one thing in the control panel. And generally an easy thing is to go to the library and pull down one of these processes. Pull down any of the processes, the customer complaint process, a to-do checklist. Management things tend to be pretty easy to implement right away. Just choose one thing and have your manager start using it. Just that one thing. Drag it to the top and say, use this, and put everything else down towards the bottom. And have them start using it in TouchStone. Just practicing is a good way to get started. I'll leave you with this story. I had a conversation yesterday with one of our users who has a lot of stuff going on in the field, and they carry around clipboards with binders, and even though they have smartphones, they haven't quite made that shift to doing things electronically. In some situations they have, but in others they haven't. And so this manager's argument against the control panel was that, well, they just don't have time for this. They don't just have time for this. It's easier for them to fill the checklist out. Then they turn it into the office. Then at the office, we scan it back in, and then we organize it by file on our network. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Think about it. She was just thinking, oh, it's too much time for the person in the field. What's really happening is the admin side of her business is completely being overwhelmed by this paper system. And the files are huge. There's so much paper. So just a little technology shift, something simple, just a little checklist, a little form, getting employees used to using it, getting the office staff used to viewing it inside of TouchStone will save her a huge amount of time in the end. So if you're having that yeah but in your mind, like, oh, this is just another thing, it's going to take too much time, try to break free of that and really think, what are the key simple things, even if it's one or two things, you can start using and benefiting from in the control panel. Thank you for coming, everybody. And I'll see you during TouchStone University if you want to pop in for any of those sessions. And then I'll probably be back in about a month for another training series. Take care. Bye-bye.